Okay, we are live.
Hello, welcome to our Analytics Breakthrough webinar series. We're excited to have Matt Stannard with us today. We had a number of webinars in the past going through those who have contributed to our book, and we're excited to have this chat today. Matt, how are you this morning or this afternoon on your end?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Ferris. Yeah, all's good in the UK here. About 3 o'clock in the afternoon over here. So yeah, cool. Thank you.
Excellent. All right. So my name is Ferris Al-Halou. I'm co-author of Google Analytics Breakthrough and a co-founder and principal consultant at Enor. With me, my colleague and friend Eric Fettman, co-author of our book, and also a senior consultant and analytics trainer and coach at Enor. Hello, Eric.
Hello, Ferris. Hello, Matt. Thank you for joining us, and thank you, folks, for logging into our webinar today.
Right. Go ahead.
We're sure to have a very interesting discussion with Matt. He is certainly an innovator. He does perhaps the most interesting and creative things in Google Analytics, honestly, of anyone I know. So he made a couple of very interesting contributions to our book, Google Analytics Breakthrough. We will check out at least one of those today, and we will also ask Matt to share any new tips or integrations or any interesting things that he's doing in GA or analytics more broadly these days, because he's always working on interesting things. So if you have questions, please make sure to enter them into the question box. And we will start today's discussion with one of Matt's book contributions, looking at an analytics challenge that Matt had for really measuring in an effective way, in a meaningful way, hotel bookings. So we will just bring up so here is one of Matt's contributions, calculated metric and custom dimensions for hotel bookings, and we'll also look at another interesting insight with the difference between European and US-based travelers in terms of how long before their trip they start looking for hotel reservations. So Matt, could you tell us a little bit more about this project, the Analytics Challenge, and how you went about coming up with a solution?
Yeah, sure. So this is all came about because it's very easy in analytics to track purchases and things like that. But for one of our clients, what they were really interested in was what they called unconstrained demand, which is what potential demand for rooms was there, because that helped them to set pricing strategy. So usually hotels, as they get filled up, well, obviously the room price will go up. And that's great if people are booking rooms, but if you're not aware how people are searching for rooms and what days they may be looking for those rooms, it can be quite hard to set put your flag in the sand and know what kind of room price you want. And so this is where we decided to start using custom dimensions and metrics to start looking at searches, and in particular check-in and check-out dates, to start to help us understand what the difference was between someone just searching for something but not booking, and how far in advance people would start looking for a particular room. And again, as Eric alluded to, you can do that by geography, and also to then start to look at an effective conversion rate, which is saying how well of people that search for a room, how well are we actually converting those people, so we can see whether there's issues or perhaps what we're showing, our shop window, may not be very appealing to people, and therefore our effective conversion rate is not very good, as opposed to overall conversion rate, which is literally anyone who hits our website or any transactions over any traffic to our website. So that's really the challenge that we're trying to address with this. And what I'd say now, actually, because obviously the world of analytics moves so quickly, is that custom dimensions also allow us to start to look at other attributes of rooms in that process. So, for example, whether or not they may have Wi-Fi or ensuite facilities or other things that hotel rooms have. And then you can start to drop those into segments to start to help understand what features in rooms may help you, be converting factors. So for us to start with, it is all about dates, but actually now you can start to really bring in a lot of other information to help understand what really drives conversions.
Right. Matt, and thanks. We covered a lot of things in that one little segment. Let's look at some of these specific aspects of all the things that you implemented in that scenario. Why don't we start with this effective booking conversion rate? Because one of the challenges I think that we all face in GA when we talk about hit level analysis, when we talk about user journey and pathing and that type of thing, we can see one conversion rate. We could see room searches as one conversion point. We could see bookings as another conversion point. But the challenge sometimes comes in tying those two together within GA and sometimes outside of GA, especially if it's multiple sessions. But if we could look at this figure from the book where we have two different goal completions and we have a calculated metric. And just to talk about calculated metrics a bit, I think that sometimes we don't quite know how to take advantage of that in GA. It can be a very useful feature, but I don't think a lot of folks out there are using the calculated metric, even though sometimes it really does do the trick. It gives us exactly what we want. So could we talk about this example a bit more?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, as you said, I think for me the first thing of why calculated metrics are really powerful is you can be more specific about what success is. And so just looking at the top line conversion rate, that literally would be goal 1 completions over sessions or goal 2 completions over sessions. But we could have a lot of unqualified traffic in that session number. That doesn't really tell us whether our audience are people that may have booked a room, just looking for the address of the hotel, whether it's just people typing something in wrong and just landing on our website. So sometimes an overall sort of conversion rate doesn't give you a true picture of success. It can be a bit clouded. So what a calculated metric allows us to do is look at the ratio between actually how many people are looking for a room on a particular date over how many have actually completed a booking. Because in an ideal world, we'd want to have a service everybody who looked for a room. We would want them to take a room from us. And if that rate, by looking at that ratio, if it's really poor, or it's really low, it can be a good indicator of, well, two things. Is our price in the market good? Because again, nowadays people will look at multiple sites or aggregators. Or B, is our availability good? So by looking at our effective booking conversion rate, if we see that's particularly low or unexpected, it enables us to start to try and ask the question why, or what can we change, what lever can we pull to try and impact that. So that's really what we were driving at with an effective booking conversion rate, to give us a bit more visibility on how well we are actually performing with our inventory.
Right, and there's inherent segmentation in this, because you're saying for the folks, it's kind of like non-bounce visitors plus. It's kind of non-bounce visitors even going a step further. If you say, well, we don't want to look at our metrics in terms of we want to weed out the bounce visitors, because as you mentioned, there's a certain number of people who are always going to bounce. This is taking it a step further and saying of the people who were interested enough to even do a room search, then what was the real macro, the conversion rate of the macro conversion after that for the people who were interested enough to do a room search. So just taking those two points, those two goal completion points, we're able to come up with a conversion rate that is as segmented as we would want it to be.
Correct.
Within the right target population. Matt, were you able, just a lot of the discussion in analytics seems to be going more towards real-time updates, personalization, that type of thing. Were you able to make any, in this scenario, were you or the client you were working with, were you able to make any dynamic updates based on any of this data, or even non-dynamic updates? What actions were you able to take based on these metrics?
I think the challenge sometimes of real time in this particular example can be whether a client can actually move to do something or change their pricing structure or whatever when the data comes through. But what we were able to do is actually take that, perhaps not real time, but say, look, we're looking at our effective conversion rate, and for example, the one at the bottom, the 29th of May, it's not performing very well. People are not. It's got people looking for rooms, but we're not converting them. Why? And the first question is, well, do we have limited stock? And the answer is no, it's not. So then straight away it's like, well, hang on a sec, let's look at our pricing strategy. And the client's actually made changes to pricing. Let's try, and this is why I think it's why measuring these things is really important. It's okay, let's try reducing our pricing. Does that impact our effective conversion rate? Yes, right. Okay, we can now start to say this is this challenge is a pricing challenge. And again, since this contribution was written, you've got tools like potentially Optimize, or you could do an A/B test to look at that in more detail to see actually if I reduce the price by $10 or $20, which has the greatest impact.
That's right, and that's interesting. And I don't think that pricing is maybe considered as much as it should be in testing. I think sometimes we're looking at things that are maybe more subtle. It's always the button color. If maybe we should be testing pricing as well, that probably isn't considered as much as it should be, because the psychology of pricing is very interesting, as we know, and lower pricing doesn't always necessarily lead to a higher conversion rate. There's a story that I heard of, actually a jewelry store that I think the owner of the jewelry store was going on vacation, and their inventory wasn't selling, and the owner gave the person who was going to be there during vacation instructions to cut the prices in half, but that instruction was misunderstood, and the prices were doubled, and all the jewelry sold apparently. Doubling the price created a perception difference. So it would be, maybe we don't look at pricing enough as a factor to test in A/B testing. So that's an interesting point.
Yeah, again, for me, it's all about in this example, we've been able to give some levers the client would be able to pull, and then change them, and then be able to measure the impact. And I think sometimes, unless you've got the right KPIs or the right metrics in place, it can be difficult to measure what impact you're having. And that's why this calculated metric is quite helpful, because it gives a very simple KPI.
And that could be evaluated on at least a daily basis.
Absolutely.
Thanks, Matt. And if let's talk a little bit about the custom dimension approach for days in advance of search, days in advance of actual stay days. I think this is very interesting. could you talk a little bit more about what we're seeing here and how you went about capturing this data?
Yeah, so again, when we're starting to look at the unconstrained demand, i.e. people looking for rooms in a hotel, we can look at the date they're looking to check in comparison to the date they're actually performing that search, and then look at that by geography. So the top chart there shows people in the US, how far in advance they are looking for a room at our hotel, and given that this hotel is in the US, you can see the high number at the top, and then it just drops right down and tails off, and that to me would seem logical. People around the hotel are looking for somewhere to stay there. They're based in the US. They're probably looking for something within, let's say, a week of the date they're looking for that room. But when you start looking at Europe, you can see that drop-off doesn't happen like that. People planning to visit the US from Europe tend to be planning a lot further in advance. And why that's quite, and again, these things may sound obvious, but the reason that that's quite important is that then you can start to tie that into your search strategies. So the messaging to US visitor to our may be quite different in, hey, look, we've got really good rates for next week coming up, whatever. But the message you may want to give to a European traveller is, look, here we go, we've got a special in 3 months. So starting to try and actually understand the intent of people looking for our product rather than assume everyone is the same. And we actually have found with this data, I don't have a graph sadly on my laptop, but we did notice, again, we had this thing called Brexit over here, and we did see a massive drop in searching from the UK at the time of Brexit. In fact, it had quite a significant impact on not only revenue but also just generally looking at hotels in the US around that time. So by measuring these things, we were able to sort of try and understand what are some of the other impacts on things like Brexit for our clients.
Interesting. Matt, just as a question, why do you think that Brexit would have influenced searches from the UK for US hotels?
2 reasons. One is the price of the pound suddenly plummeted, and the second one is that uncertainty. I think in times of uncertainty, people tend just to keep stuck to where they are. So we didn't see much of an impact in the US market, but certainly in the UK market, we saw that drop. And again, if you're just tying this back into like paid search, for example, one of the things you might suddenly think about is, well, do I need to decrease my paid search budget then? Because I don't want to keep chucking money into something that's not going to drive return. So again, understanding this, what people are doing in different markets is very important.
Right, and I guess we all should create a big annotation in Google Analytics. Brexit. I don't know if we could put it on. I don't know if we could put it out a single day as we need to for an annotation, but that's something that we really should all be.
Did you guys see much of a change with Donald Trump?
What's that?
Well, there were, yeah. I mean, not getting. No, Matt was asking if there was change, with the election of the new president. Politics aside, I mean, there were actually different businesses, different sites. There were actually. This is not a joke. Actually, there were. I think some of the immigration sites to Canada. I think one of the sites crashed. So again, politics aside, this is the data. So Matt, I have a maybe not a tactical question, but if I'm a marketing manager or an analyst, and maybe I'm new to analytics, or I'm comfortable with the standard metrics and dimensions, strategy-wise, how do I think of custom metrics, custom dimensions, calculated metrics? Sorry, is it kind of you start from the business questions, or like how what would sort of lead to say, yeah, I want to implement calculated metrics or something that's custom in general?
Yeah. So for me, it's a great question. Obviously, you've got your out-of-the-box stuff, but some of these things that if you want more, they don't just magically appear. And the first thing I like to try and sit down or to do is to sit down with a business and chat through if we could measure things, what would those KPIs be, and then how could we implement them if analytics is indeed the best place to collect that data. How can we implement those, and how does that information surface itself in analytics? And again, I mean, the previous page you had is quite good. If you're someone who's familiar with analytics, you know what that effective booking rate metric is. It's very easy for you to lay your hands on. However, these graphs here aren't actually in analytics; they're in Excel, so it needs a little bit more knowledge of, okay, well, I know what I'm collecting in analytics, but in order to calculate this, I need to be able to pull that data out. And again, there's things now like Data Studio, for example, that perhaps if you've got that information in your analytics, you can start to query and look at that in a bit more of a robust, in a bit more of a suite environment, like in one place. So I think that, yeah, for me, it's the first thing really before you even potentially jump into analytics is just think about, as you said, what the business question is, but also think about what are those like KPIs that we need to be measuring, and what's the best way to measure them.
All right, thanks.
Have you started using Data Studio, Matt?
Yeah, it's pretty awesome, isn't it?
We like it from this end. Our visualization team has started using it more. I think we're probably waiting for the product to, we're happy with it at this point and waiting for it to mature. Ferris, do you think that's where we're at this point with Data Studio?
Yeah, and there's a lot of, I mean, it's relatively new compared to other visualization products and BI products, but it comes, out of out of the lab, and Nick and team, they've done an amazing job, I think, in terms of, especially within the Google ecosystem. You have a lot of connectors to not just GA, but to BigQuery, to obviously AdWords, to YouTube.
That's right, to Google Search Console. That's right, the connectors. It's interesting to see the connectors that are available.
A lot of native connectors, and that just a lot of good use cases, very modern, sort of cool visualizations that you can do. And the product is evolving at a very fast pace. So some of the enterprise features, I think they'll come around, and it's free, so use it.
Well, the other thing I was going to say as well, in Data Studio, you can obviously do is you can create groupings and metrics and dimensions on the fly in your data source. So again, that can be, for things like this, can be quite useful to be able to then create you could have a metric in analytics, a calculated metric, but you could calculate effective booking in Data Studio if you wanted to, or you could even take it one step further. That's why I think that why the product lends itself to is quite powerful, because you can take stuff a little bit further without necessarily cluttering up GA.
That's a great point, Matt. That's a great point. Yeah, you could do the calculated metrics and filtering and other things that maybe would or would not have been suitable for GA, but either way, that capability is useful in Data Studio.
I have one client, and we do something called the contribution per pound, which is a calculated metric, which is the most bizarre formula in the world. It's got all kinds of constants and things in it, and yeah, Data Studio is fantastic for that. It just works really well. But yeah, so again, just being able to just take something like that the client said, look, this is how we work out what a contribution of a campaign is per pound spent. Just being able to chuck that into Data Studio is incredibly useful.
Yeah, that is a great point. It's not just visualization. There's some transformation element in there as well. Matt, we have a few minutes left. Just want to quickly take a look at your other contribution to the book, which is also really super interesting and a great example of the use of measurement protocol. Let me just pull it up. We'll look for storage. I don't have the page number offhand. Storage. You know what? I'm sorry. We're going to look for your name again. Got to jump. Sorry that I don't have the page number ready to go. There we go. Okay, so measurement protocol. So, Matt, could you just briefly go over measurement protocol at a general level and just tell us how you use measurement protocol in the CRM tracking solution, the offline booking solution that you...
Yeah, so
please go ahead.
Sure. So measurement protocol for me was when Universal Analytics came out, probably one of the most exciting things.
Yeah.
Being able to send
the most
data.
universal thing about Universal, I think when Universal came out, people are like, well, this is mostly the same. What's universal about this? I think measurement protocol is the most universal thing about Universal.
Yeah, and so like people like myself and probably you guys got excited. Others were like, what's Universal then? And so for me, I was excited about that because it meant I could send data into analytics from any internet or web connected system, which is fantastic. So one of our clients who do self-storage, believe that's what it's called. You guys have Storage Wars, so I'm sure they call it self-storage in the US.
Yes.
And so what we wanted to be able to do is, like a lot of in this instance, this site was like a B2B site. You went online, you asked for a price, submitted a form, and that was the end of the journey. So in analytics, we could capture form fields, but we had no idea whether someone was then called up. We had no idea whether that actually resulted in a sale. So what we did is we used the measurement protocol to send that data back from the CRM into analytics to give us a bit more visibility of number of inbound leads, number of times people were rung up, and how many actually resulted in sales. So we could actually try and get a bit more of a truer picture of how our stores were performing. I think, did we put a dashboard in?
I think
here.
So. Let's scroll down. What do we have here?
And I think my favorite story with this is that after we did this, we gave the company and these are really simple things. Really, yeah, a really simplistic dashboard. There's nothing complex whatsoever. We gave this to the managing director on a Chromebook because we wanted it to give him something that was really easy to understand. So essentially a simple pie chart of where does my traffic, what stores get traffic. So the traffic comes to Cambridge. Let's look at stores by inquiries. Where are people actually filling forms in on site? And then what he wanted to make sure is that if someone made an inquiry, that store was following it up with a phone call. So we had something that the measurement protocol would track a phone call has happened, and that would go back into analytics. And you should see in an ideal world it would be at least a 1-to-1 ratio, but it could be higher because people get called more than once. You might not be in. And then looking further along, how many actual real physical bookings were made during that period. And what we found, what the story I like about this the best, is that we found one store had a really high inquiry rate, but no bookings at all. And when we looked, there were no phone calls. And we actually found that during that period, the store manager had broken up with his girlfriend, and therefore was not making any calls.
Was this the store manager in Nottingham?
Yeah, quite probably.
Okay. Well, I feel sorry for him.
Yeah, so I just think it's quite nice to be able to say, well, now we're capturing some data, it's telling us something, and then we can start to say why might that be what's happening. And I think that for me just showed why in this particular instance it was a very good thing for the storage company.
Yeah.
And again, measurement protocol and things like that have got even more advanced now. You can do really cool things with CRM. So again, I think any system where the journey doesn't end with an online form fill should definitely be looking at measurement protocol integration to try and close that gap. And I know the book's got a lot of other great contributions around that as well.
Yes, thanks, Matt. And just to scroll up from an implementation standpoint, so what Matt has illustrated here, and chime in, Matt, if I'm saying anything that's veering away from the intent, but whenever there was a phone call made from the CRM, or wherever there was an offsite interaction, particularly a booking at the storage facility, that was entered into the CRM, and then you programmatically sent a measurement protocol from the CRM, as is demonstrated here, including the client ID as well, which you had originally captured, and that way you were able to use the multi-channel funnels to see the attribution for any interaction that took place, even if that action was offline.
Yeah, correct. And that thing in that example, the class descript new, I think that just allowed us to see what unit size someone had purchased. So again, if we wanted to do, I don't think we did drill down that far when we were analysing it, but if we did want to compare someone said I wanted 100 square meters,
right,
and then 50, we'd be able to see whether they were downsold or upsold.
Right. Yeah, we can never. Custom dimensions in so many contexts really are critical, or at least really good to have when you need them. So we always want to take those into account.
Yeah.
Matt, we've reached the end of our half hour. Ferris, do you have any other questions for Matt at this point?
No, thanks, Matt. Really appreciate your being with us today on this webinar, as well as your book contribution and all the nifty and cool ways that you have used Google Analytics for.
No, cool. Thanks so much, guys.
Thank you, Matt. So please feel free to connect with Matt at email address that we see here, or on Twitter. He's always doing lots of interesting things, as we've seen in our discussion today. And stay connected with Ferris and myself and the rest of the eNOR team on our blog and through the Analytics Breakthrough webinar series. Also, make sure to stay connected with the Digital Analytics Association. Not sure, Matt, DAA in the UK as well?
Yep, there is.
Okay, so stay connected wherever you are in the world. Stay connected with DAA. Do a lot of good things to support our community, and make sure to check out Matt's contributions and our other contributors' contributions and the rest of the material in GA Breakthrough, Google Analytics Breakthrough book. More information at gabreakthrough.com. We're very happy with the reception so far. So thanks, folks, for listening, and thanks especially to our guest, Matt Stannard. Matt, we hope to connect with you again very soon, and hope to see you sometime soon.
Cool. Thanks so much, guys.
All right, thanks so much, Matt. Thanks, Eric.
See you later.
Thanks, Ferris. Bye, Matt.
Bye-bye. Cheers. Bye.